Okay, so I'm just going to push this live in five, four, three, two, one.
Bam! Are we live? Live and
Yeah.
direct. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Aaron Lovejoy, and this is ReaperCon live online 2020 because we got the COVID. So pretty exciting, pretty different. But I think it's really cool that everyone got to come together and do classes and interact and have fun together, do hangouts and stuff. I just did a hangout earlier today. It was super fun painting with other people. So, and I think we're actually going to do a hangout tomorrow night, maybe.
From
Okay.
7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time.
Yeah, so is that through Miniature Monthly or?
Through Miniature Monthly.
Okay, so the Miniature Monthly crew is going to do one on our Discord. It's an open channel for anybody. It's called All the Peeps, and anyone and everyone's invited. So it's going to be what, 7 to 10 tomorrow? 7 to 9? Whatever. So if you don't have anything going on and you just want to come hang out with a couple of weird people that paint stuff, feel free to do that. Anyways, my name is Aaron Lovejoy. I've been painting for about 20 plus years now, teaching for probably 10 or 12, I don't know. My first classes actually were at ReaperCon, and holy cow, I am just as nervous right now as I was back then. So if I run out this door, like I'm probably running to the bathroom because I gotta poop. Anyways, I am an MSP medalist, which means I get this really cool jersey shirt thing, Reaper Paint Crew, and it also means that I don't ever get to win a Sophie again. But I'm really honored to have gotten that. It means that I've done a lot in the community to help out other painters and stuff. Not only just painted good and stuff, but helping other people out, being a part of the community. And I'm really, that's one thing that I really love about Reaper is the community. You guys are the community. You men and women are the community as well as us. So it's all good. We can all sit around and paint our little toys together, and it's super fun. Let's see. I've been airbrushing for about 10 years now. I've got a cheat sheet on the side so I don't forget what I'm doing. I've been airbrushing for about 10 years now. Took me about 7 years to actually figure it out. And so it's really cool taking these airbrushing classes. I know there's a few other classes going on here at ReaperCon. It's really cool taking airbrushing classes because you get to learn in a lot quicker than 7 years. And airbrush is a fantastic tool. And so about 2 years ago, Badger Airbrushes, Ken from Badger, asked me to start helping out working on an airbrush. And he said, what would be your perfect airbrush? And I told him, well, if you can't beat the two airbrushes I'm using right now, don't even bother. Like, I'm not going to use it because I don't need it. And guess what? He did. And that is the Reaper Vex. And that's why we're here today. I am super excited that Reaper picked up this airbrush because, well, once again, I love the people at Reaper. Reaper has a great community. And I think having one of the best airbrushes out there is really a cool reflection on Reaper because they strive to give the best to their customers. And that's what the Vex is. Okay, so speaking of classes, we have an announcement here at Miniature Monthly. I will be doing in the month of October online airbrush classes. We're theming the entire month. It's a four-week period. We're skipping Halloween because we knew people would freak out because I'm going to be out trick-or-treating probably in a different room in my house because I can't go outside. So anyways, we're doing online classes. You can sign up at miniaturemonthly.com. If you're new to airbrushing or you're an experienced airbrusher, I think that the classes will be good. Either way, if you go to our, wrong web page, I wasn't prepared here. So anyways, this is our website. If you click on the airbrushing classes from me, you can select either the first one, second one, third one, fourth one. Each airbrushing class kind of builds on the last. You can do airbrush blending and you can learn how to keep it from clogging. All these cool things. They're interactive classes. We're actually putting together some packages with Reaper so that you can paint the same exact miniatures as I'm painting in the class, or you can paint whatever you want. If you want to paint a tank, whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you learn how to airbrush. So we've got all these packages. If you get all 4 classes, you basically get 1 class for free. But I didn't think that was good enough for Reaper. So we have put up a discount code. This is ReaperCon 2020. If you're signing up and you're going to your checkout, type in ReaperCon 2020 and you get 15% off of your entire order. It doesn't matter if you ordered one class or all four, you get the discount. And for the 4 classes, you actually get the discount on top of the discount you already got. So that's super awesome. This will go through all the way through to 1 minute before the last class starts. So you can literally sign up at any time this month, type in that code, and you're good to go. You get 15% off, which I think is a really good deal. But you know what? I just didn't think it was good enough for Reaper. And Liz told me not to do this, but we're freaking doing it, okay? So this is a time-sensitive discount code. It's the Early Bird 50. Type that in, and you get 50% off of the bundle. So you have to buy the 4-week bundle, but you get 50% off. So basically, you get 2 free classes out of this.
It just needs to refresh.
This is the best bundle you can get, and obviously the best price you can get. And I just want to thank all of you at Reaper for supporting me over the years and everything, and that's why I'm doing this. It only lasts for 3 hours, so at 11:59 Eastern time tonight, that's 3 hours from now, it's going to go away, and then it'll just be the 15% off. So anyways, if you want to learn about airbrushing and stuff, take the classes at miniaturemonthly.com. Okay, so enough pimping that. Let's talk about the Vex, because that's what we're here to talk about today. So I've got a little bit different box than the actual box that goes out, because I got mine a little bit earlier and I don't think they had the cool sticker, but you know what? I think this is pretty awesome right here. I really like that Reaper sticker.
How's it sounding in there, though?
So
we didn't get to test.
Pull this off.
So I'm just like...
Pull out my airbrush. This one. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the Reaper Vex does and the differences between the 2 airbrushes, which isn't a whole lot. It's basically
I'm going to say something in there, and if you hear it come over, just let me know.
So we've got the large cup, and you can tell I've been using this one like crazy. There's paint all over it and everything. I absolutely love this airbrush. Let me actually zoom in a little bit closer so we can get a little closer view of these airbrushes next to each other. So you got 2 different airbrushes. You got the small cup, and I would say if you're into painting 1 miniature at a time, small scale painting, I guess, get the smaller cup. That's all you need. But if you're like me, you paint armies and you paint detail, competition pieces, get the bigger cup, because it will just hold more paint. That's basically the difference between the 2. The other thing, let's take a closer look at the actual Vex. So let's see here. So the cup sizes are different. The connection point is different than like a Badger airbrush. These airbrushes were made by Badger, but they are a little bit different. And the connection size is one of them. This is a 1/4 inch connection size, and this has been causing us fits all week. Because everyone's asking about this, and I thought it'd be just as easy as typing in 1/4 inch quick disconnect, but it's not that easy. Everything says 1/8 inch, but this is a 1/4 inch. So I've got 2 quick connects. You can see right here, this is the one you want, not the small Badger one, because it's not a Badger hookup feed there. So that's one difference. Another cool thing about this airbrush is it comes with 2 needles right out of the box. So the black needle is your detail needle. It's very fine. It'll put down a very fine spray. The other needle is more of a general purpose needle, but the funny thing about this, and this is what I'm so excited about this airbrush, this general purpose airbrush does my fine detail and my general purpose, no problem. Yes, this needle, the black needle, will spray a little bit finer. It does a little bit finer dot. Pull that out. It does a little bit finer dot pattern, but I can get just about as fine a dot pattern with this one if I control my airbrush. And that's something you'll learn in my online classes. So another reason to take them other than the 50% off. So anyways, I'm really excited about this. The other really cool thing about this airbrush is both needles fit into the same nozzle. So normally with an airbrush, you have to take the nozzle out to be able to get to put a new needle in. They all fit a particular size needle. On the Vex, both needles fit in the same nozzle. So you don't have to change anything internally to change your needle size. For me, I don't change anything ever because I only use the bigger needle. So it works out pretty good. But if you so desire and you want to do more fine detail stuff, you've got the fine detail needle for that. That is a really cool feature. Oh, we got a question.
Can you use the tall trigger, the high roller trigger?
Oh, for sure, for sure. So I'm going to show you. I shouldn't show this to you, but everyone's seen it already. This was my Frankenstein demo version of the Vex that I've been using for the last 2 years, and I put a high roller trigger in here. So you can get these high roller triggers. They're just taller, right? So you see that? So if it can give you a little bit more control. It's funny. I like them both. It's just really weird. Which brings me to the beveled edge on this trigger. This is really nice. It's different than like say a Patriot 105 or a Sotar in that it kind of cups your finger right there, and it's just it feels better. It like if you're airbrushing a lot, you kind of get you get calloused on your trigger finger and it starts hurting. So that's a nice trigger that comes with this, but you can switch it out for the taller trigger. And I know online some manufacturers sell a shorter trigger. So depending on your style, you can always modify it from there. It works just the same. Now the other cool thing is with this airbrush, with both of them, there is this. Let's see. Can you see inside there? I'm going to spin this. So see that part is moving down. So that will allow me to only pull the trigger back so far. It's like a trigger stop. And this is good if you're not real comfortable with airbrushing at first, especially for a beginner. If you're not real comfortable with airbrushing, you can set that so it only pulls back so far. So if you know how far to pull back and the paint comes out, just set it right there and you'll never pull back further. You know, it just stops you right there. Now, as you get better at airbrushing, you'll find that you probably don't want to use this feature because you can do what's called a hard spray to keep your airbrush from clogging. But in those first days when you first get an airbrush and you're just too scared, you know, your trigger finger's not adept to pulling back just a little bit, you're going to pull back too far and probably end up wrecking a couple models. So anyways, you still got to practice and everything, but that's a really cool feature that this airbrush has. And I was really adamant with Ken when we were designing this. And one of the things that I think sold it for Reaper was the fact that this airbrush works really good for a basic beginner airbrusher. Like if this was your first airbrush, it's a good buy. Because one, it doesn't clog very fast, especially with the larger needle in. And two, it's got these other features that helps you control your airbrush a little bit better. So that's a really good thing. I knew that most people are not like professional airbrushers. In fact, probably 99% of people out there are not professional airbrushers. And so they're not going to have the control over their airbrush that say I do or one of these other really good airbrushing guys has. And so this airbrush helps all that stuff. But if you keep moving on and you want to do more detailed stuff, the Vex also does that. So I do all my detail work now with the Vex. I do all my general purpose work with the Vex. I do everything with the Vex. I don't change anything. And in fact, I don't even change the needle. I put the silver needle in and I'm done. Good to go. We're rocking. So that's another feature of the Vex. The other really cool thing, so other than the nozzle, other than you not having to take the nozzle off, and I'll take this front cap off real quick here. So this is the nozzle. This is the part I was talking about. So normally you have to change this nozzle out when you change the needle, but in the Vex, you don't need to do that at all. Both needles work in the same nozzle. I don't know how they did it. There's something internally that they did to make it to work that way. They also geared the internals not to clog as much. And so when I first got my Vex, I did a test. I had a 14-day paint challenge where I was painting an army for a guy, and we were filming the whole thing. And I didn't clean my airbrush for the first 10 days. Like I'd run water, I'd run my cleaning mixture through it at the end of the day, but I didn't do a cleanup like I normally do at the end of the day. And it took 10 days before I was like, dude, I need to clean this airbrush. And there was so much paint inside that nozzle. Like it took me a couple of hours to get it clean. But that tells me normally you can't do that with the normal airbrush. You start airbrushing and then after, especially with abuse like that, I was spraying primers, regular acrylics and inks through the airbrush, and they all worked perfectly for 10 days. And then I was like, I got to clean this thing. So that's another really cool thing about the Vex is it's a little more user-friendly when it comes to clogging. Also, dry tipping is a little bit knocked off as well. So I don't have as many of those problems because I run at a really high PSI, but at the start, you probably want to run at about 20 PSI in your compressor. But we'll talk about that here in a second. The other really cool thing about the Vex is I run the nozzle like this, the nozzle cap. Oh, we got another question.
Replacement needles, are the needles unique to the Vex, or does it use the standard?
They're unique to the Vex. Yeah. So one of the reasons why this took so long to come out is they had to design, manufacture, whatever the needle. It is a different needle. It won't it maybe another needle will fit in this, but it's not supposed to. You'll probably have adverse results. So you definitely want to have the Vex needles. It comes with the 2, like I said, but I always say have 1 or 2 on hand besides that, because you don't know when like for bringing us to the nozzle, the tip of the nozzle right here, the nozzle cover. I have mine like this because this allows me to get in with my fingernails and clean off any dry tip that happens. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes when I'm actually airbrushing. But it allows me to clean the needle off, right? Well, when I first started, I would bend my needles all the time. And you don't want to bend your needle because then you have wonky sprays and you'll get speckling and stuff like that. So this airbrush actually has a reversible nozzle tip. And watch, I'm not going to be able to get this on. Okay. This is what happens when you get nervous in front of an entire class of people. Okay, so put that on. The needle still sticks out just a hair on the end, but if I drop this, I'm not messing that needle up. So that's pretty cool. I love that because I know that beginners are going to be buying this airbrush. And so that was a very important feature, I thought, was to be able to give them a chance to get good at airbrushing before they wreck their airbrush. Because I think that's, when I first started airbrushing, I airbrushed for about 6 months and I quit for 5 years because it was the worst experience of my life. In fact, I'm probably majorly bald because of an airbrush. Like, it just really drives you crazy. So having little features like this, not clogging as fast, stuff like that is all really good. Also, you know what? Just saying, that Reaper logo on the side of this black airbrush is just sexy. Like, it just looks friggin' cool. Yeah, it's so cool. I've wanted a black airbrush like this for so long. I'm just over the moon. So anyways, those are the main features of the Vex. It's good for beginners, like I said. It's good for advanced airbrushers. It's good for everybody. I do this for a living. If I'm not painting, if I'm spending most of my time cleaning my airbrush, I'm not making any money, and that's not good because then Liz yells at me and we can't pay rent, we get kicked out, and we're on the street. So that would all be bad things. If I'm airbrushing, if I'm painting, I'm making money. I'm having fun. So that's the main selling point for me, and that's why I haven't touched another airbrush in 2 years. I was honestly so scared that for some reason this airbrush just wouldn't come out, and I would be stuck with my crazy Frankenstein airbrush, which I don't mind the look of it, but eventually there wouldn't be any more needles for it. So I was like, dude, this airbrush better come out because it's a really, really solid airbrush. So that's the main points on the Vex. Those are the things that I think make it really cool. Just know that even though this is made, I just want to reiterate this, even though this is made by Badger, the connector points are different. So see that? That's the 1/8 inch. This is a 1/4 inch. It's much larger. So get these. Now, one thing that's really cool, I use a quick connect on my airbrush hose. So they're these things right here. So a quick connect means I just plug it in and it's ready to go. If I want to switch airbrushes, I pop it out. Let's say I want to go back to my Badger. I pop it in. Even though it has a different thread up here, the connector for the quick connect is the same on every single quick connect. So once you get a quick connect on your airbrush hose, you can use any airbrush. It doesn't matter if you use Iwata, Harder Steinbeck, anything. So once you have that quick connect on your airbrush, you're good to go. And I say get one, even if you only have one airbrush, because screwing this on and off every day or twice a day or 4 times a day, eventually you're going to wreck the threads, and that's not good because then you're buying a new airbrush. So yeah, so definitely get a quick connect for your airbrush. All right. So that being said, we have covered the airbrush. Now, what else do you need with your Badger Vex? I don't know. All right, let me cue this up. Okay, so you're going to need an air compressor. These are the best air compressors I've seen. So these are made by Badger as well. There's the Aspire Pro and the Aspire Elite. This is the TC910, TC909. They have a 908 that doesn't have this little heat metal grating thing on it, which is good. They've also got one for $153. These air compressors are more expensive than your normal air compressor, but they spray air better than any other compressor I've ever seen. So if you want to start off on a good foot, if you want to start off with the best, which I recommend, go ahead and get one of these. Now, you can get the cheaper one. It's still a really good airbrush, or you could go to some of these off brands. You can get ones for $89, $79, stuff like that. But quite honestly, this is your air supply, and it's the most, besides your airbrush, it's the most important thing for your airbrush, because it's the thing pushing the paint through it, you know? So the Aspire Elite airbrushes, air compressors are simply the best. They move air better than any other air compressor that I've seen. So especially for these small ones, I'm sure you could get like a huge air compressor, but then you're dealing with a lot of noise. These ones are very quiet. I airbrush in the middle of the night and Liz doesn't even know. So, oh, we got a question.
What makes some compressors better than others?
Let's put it this way. Badger tinkers with theirs. That's it. They've re-engineered the inside of their compressor to do a bunch of things that I'm not allowed to talk about. But basically, it moves the air better. Its air intake is better than the air outtake, so you'll never have a problem with it just running out of air as it's vamping up. It uses less energy. There's a lot of things, but for me, the first time I ever used one of the Badger air compressors was at Gen Con, and I noticed immediately, I was like, wow, this sprays, my paint atomizes better. And atomization for airbrushing, if you're new to airbrushing, atomization is your paint basically turns into little bitty dot particles, and it flies at the model, like at Mach speed. So the lower your air pressure or the worse your airflow, the bigger those dots get. So I found I used to fight the big dots for a long time. Now I don't think about them anymore because I can't see the dots. I literally cannot see the dots. If I look really hard, maybe I'll see a few. But the atomization is much better. Now, I run at a really high PSI. I want you guys to start with to run at 20 PSI. If you take my classes, I'll show you how to run at 40 PSI, but that's like the OK Corral, man. It's like out of control. So, but the higher your pressure, the better your atomization. So the fact that these air compressors spray at a more constant rate with better airflow, they atomize better. So I don't know if I can explain it any better than that, but okay, question again.
Yes. Go over the inline water traps. And do you know if the compressor has a filter in it that keeps it from like sucking in dust particles?
I don't know about that. I'm sure there's got to be some sort of thing to like, I think. I don't know. I never took my compressor apart to see. And there's nothing that you need to change on the compressor. Now, if you look at these pictures up close, there's actually a water filter right here on the air compressor. This comes on every single little teeny tiny air compressor you see, except for this one. Go figure. And I'll tell you right now, those water filters don't work. So to fix this problem, so what happens is your air compressor will get very hot. And if you run it if you're out here in Georgia or California, I had this problem really bad, and it's humid. Once your air compressor runs for about 15 or 20 minutes, it gets really hot on the inside. And that water that's inside that's inside the air that's being sucked in, the moisture, it turns to steam. It doesn't hydrate. Like normally compressed, it hydrates, and so you can catch it in a water trap. But this air is super hot, and it turns to steam. And that steam does not get caught by these water traps. It just doesn't. So here's how you fix it. And that was my next thing on the list, which is really funny. Oops, not that one. So this is your airbrush hose. You're going to need an airbrush hose to get air from your compressor to your airbrush. The way to fix water in your line, like your airbrush just spraying water, is this inline water trap right here. So this one's $29. That's more expensive than I remember it ever being, but who knows? I haven't bought one in a while. But I found them for as little as $12. Just look around on Amazon and you'll find inline water trap for air compressor or for an airbrush air hose. And this gives your air about 6 or 8 feet to cool off just enough for that water to rehydrate in your hose, and then it gets caught by this water trap. If you don't have this water trap, it goes right out the front of your airbrush and it ruins whatever you're working on. So for years, I would sit around with a rag in my back pocket, and because there's no sound or anything, it's just you're airbrushing, and then it goes, and there's water everywhere, and it's like you got the perfect blend going on your dragon, and it's just over. So you definitely want to get the inline water trap. That's a fix for water problems in your line. And if you look at any pneumatic tool at Home Depot, all of them say put the water trap as close to the tool as possible. So in this case, we're putting this water trap pretty close to the airbrush itself. You don't want it to be right on the airbrush because then it makes it hard for you to hold in your hand, but right here is perfect. So get one of those. Do yourself a favor, never have a problem with air or water coming through your line again. Okay, so we talked about the quick disconnect before. You need the 1/4 inch one. If you look it up online, it got super confusing because they all say 1/8 inch, and I think they're referring to the connector for the quick disconnect, not the threads up here. But this one, this shape one, is the one you want. You want the bigger one of the two. Badger has a smaller one for theirs, but that's what you want. The quick disconnect, you also want to get a set that has both. It has the male and the female, because I've had people go and they buy this one, but then they don't have this one to hook it into. So that's a big problem. So anyways, do yourself a favor, get the quick disconnect. You don't have to do it right away, but you really should, because it just solves a lot of problems right off the bat. And believe me, when you're first learning to airbrush, you're going to be taking your airbrush apart, cleaning it, taking it to the bathroom and washing it out a lot. So you want something that can, like, just don't be frustrated. Spinning that airbrush off to get it off is not fun, especially when you're upset. So the next thing you're going to need is some cleaning tools. A lot of people I found, including myself, got this one. So it's a little cup, it's a cleaning pot. You put your airbrush in there, you spray it. It doesn't get dust all over the place and paint and everything. I don't use this. This is a great airbrush holder. My problem is, and you'll see here in a bit when I actually change colors, I like to be able to see my spray when I'm spraying, because that tells me if my airbrush is clogging or not. So I don't use this cleaning pot, but I do use this set right here. And of course it disappears right away. Okay, so this one right here, it comes with some what are these called? Pipe cleaners. Comes with a little squirt bottle. This is great for spraying out. You'll see I'll use one here in a minute. And then I don't use any of these other tools, but I do use this tool right here. This is, that's like a Dremel tool cleaning Teflon tool. It comes with this nice little handle, and I'll show you that here in a minute as well. But so I use that, I use these pipe cleaners, I use the water bottle, and that's pretty much it from this kit. But it's a pretty good kit. I like it, and it's a good buy for sure. You got to clean your stuff. So lastly, another main thing that you're going to need is a respirator. So you can get them fairly cheap, $40, $30. I'm obviously not going to use one while I'm doing this class because it'll sound like this the whole time. So that's not going to happen. But if you want to save your lungs, some people are more sensitive to the dust than others. Be very careful when you're airbrushing. I know Reaper paints don't contain like heavy metals and stuff, but some other brands do, like still do to this day. You think it's all illegal? It's not. Read the labels. Well, it is illegal, but I don't know. So anyways, there's certain brands that use cadmium in their yellows and their reds. And they'll actually say on the side of the bottle, do not airbrush, because you do not want that dust up in the air. So all the dust in the air is not wet paint. It's actually dried paint particles just flying around. So if you get dust all over your painting area, you can actually wipe it off. It's a huge mess. So anyways, don't do that. But getting one of these respirator masks, that's peace of mind, right? So get yourself some safety gear, and I think you should be good to go. Okay, so where are we at? On this one. We've got so many scenes for this, it's crazy. So let's go back to the airbrush itself, and I'm gonna show you kind of what the Reaper Vex can do. Continue asking questions, because I'm here to answer any and all questions. But at the same time, maybe you learn something. Oh, question. What do you know?
Make sure you're repeating the questions. They're having trouble hearing
Okay.
me. What about a miniature paint booth instead of a respirator?
What about a miniature paint booth instead of a respirator? What, are you kidding me, man? No, I'm just kidding. What about both? You could do that. but so stuff's going to fly forward. It might hit and come back too. But those spray booths are great. You can get one on Amazon for like $100. Like, and my buddy, I do a commission service, or I did a commission service back in San Diego. We're still like partners, but we're just not in the same city anymore. He uses one and it's awesome. You know, have it vented to the outside. So if you're in your garage or something, you could vent it out, or in a bedroom and you own the house. Don't do this in your apartment, because cutting holes in your walls is not good. But you could actually vent it right out of your room. I do all my airbrushing indoors, inside, because I used to be scared I'd get stuff all over the place. I'm very controlled, and so I don't really have that problem. I'm not having dust everywhere. Oops. I hit my. I'm getting things are getting crazy in the Vex class. Oh my God. Crazy. Anyways, I'm pretty controlled. Also, the compressor is very quiet, so I just do everything indoors. I don't have to fight with like the heat, the sunlight. You know, it's the wrong time of day. It's starting to get dark or whatever. Everything is controlled in my room. So I have a puppy pad, and you can actually see that right here. I know that sounds kind of gross, but they work really good for painting on top of. You spill anything on them, and let me see if I can focus on this puppy pad. There you go. So this is a puppy pad. Sometimes don't tell Liz this.
No,
when I am in a zone, the puppy pad works for dual purposes. You know what I mean? Like, because you go to the bathroom, you break your concentration, you don't know what you're doing. So, anyways, so yeah. I would get the airbrush booth, because they're relatively inexpensive, and use a respirator. But at that point, maybe you don't have to use like a hardcore respirator. Maybe you just use a mask or something. But either way, like, you really want to stay on the safe side rather than the sorry side. So, you know, I'm going to recommend respirator and spray booth. But yeah, it's kind of your call at that point. I know wearing a respirator, like, you'd start sweating, like you just have sweat dripping out of the bottom. It's pretty gross. But anyways, especially if you've been airbrushing for 3 or 4 hours like I do, it's not the most exciting, sexy thing you could possibly do. But I know most people don't airbrush that long, so it is what it is. Okay, so any other questions, or can I just start going too legit to quit?
I think you can just go.
All right,
Do your thing.
we're gonna take it to the bridge.
Jelly
Okay.
bean.
All right, so I'm going to use the bigger cup. I personally prefer the bigger cup because I do bigger projects. When you're loading your airbrush, I'm going to be using Stynylrez paint primer from Badger. It's already airbrush ready. Now, I asked Reaper, are you going to carry primer? Not at the moment. Are you gonna make airbrush paints? Not at the moment. That's totally okay, because we can mix our own. And I mix Reaper paints all the time. In fact, I prefer non-airbrush ready paints than airbrush ready paints, because you never know when they've actually dried out too much to be airbrush ready. So, anyways, if you were wondering if Reaper's going to carry airbrush ready paints, not at the moment, but they might. Who knows? Buy a bunch of Vexes. It'll be cool. We're set. We got Reaper airbrush paints and everything. But I'm going to use this Stynylrez paint. So in this demo today, I'm going to show you, I'm going to spray Stynylrez paint, I'm going to spray some Reaper acrylic paints, and I'm going to spray inks, and show you that this airbrush sprays all three, no problem. I can get fine details, I can get general purpose sprays at the same time. So Stynylrez is, I think, one of the best airbrush ready primers out there. It just works really, really good, and it's got a really smooth finish. Pour it in. I'm only going to pour a little bit in because we're just painting a Sophie right now. And actually, I'm going to pull my light up a little bit closer. So you can see just a little bit of paint, or not a little bit, about a quarter of the way full. I wouldn't go above halfway full, because what happens is when you're airbrushing, sometimes you start bending like this, and if it spills out the front, it goes right down here and then sprays and then explodes off your airbrush, and that's not a good sight to see anywhere. So got that. So I'm actually using the airbrush I've been using nonstop for the last 2 weeks. Didn't bother to clean it today, so who knows? So I'm spraying with the dirty airbrush basically, but you see it's still spraying a good spray. Boom. Oh, I gotta move this back because I want to be able to do my hard sprays. So a hard spray is when you go all down on your air. So pushing all down is the air and pulling all back on the paint. So it'll go like this. See that big spray of paint? I do a couple of those, and what that does is that's a really hard air pressure, and it will just blow out, hopefully, anything bad that's inside your nozzle. You know, any dried up paint, anything like that. I get that, then I do a test. Can I get a nice fine spray on this paper towel? Yeah, I think I can. That's pretty cool. All right, so we're spraying primer right now, and this is with the silver needle. So the more general purpose needle. Typically, I glue these kind of like this. I'll glue a Reaper miniature to a base real lightly. Not a whole lot of glue. And that's just so I can hold it, or I can put it on one of my paint holders. I got some of these crazy ones from Games Workshop, and I can just kind of put them in like this. Boom, I've got a holder, and I can hold on to it. I didn't think to do that before this class, so this is how I'm going to prime Sophie. So normally, when I'm priming miniatures, you have the problem if you got to hold the miniature. So I usually start with either the bottom or the top, and then I let that dry, and then I switch to the other side. So I'm going to do this one like this. So spray a little test spray. I'm going to put this on. Now, we all know Reaper bones. Sometimes when you use rattle can sprays, they literally turn to like bubble gum, like super, super sticky. I know they've been working on their formulas and stuff, and it's gotten better, but I'm always scared that that's going to happen. So sorry about my air compressor. It's just going to go on every once in a while. I airbrush all of my Reaper bones. I airbrush the primer on. So I'll start with the black primer, and then I put a white primer over it. So I'm going to put this on. I have my air pressure set at 60 PSI right now. I'm sorry, not 60, 40, actually 50. Sorry. The Cult of 40 has now gone up to the Cult of 50. I basically have my air pressure set as high as it will go on this compressor. So I've got that. I've got my first side on. I can flip the model around. I still have something to hold on to, and I can do the back side of this model. So just spray that. I usually try not to spray like really hard, just, all on right now. I mean, you'll cover your model pretty well, but I like to put on a little bit thinner sprays and build it up. 2 or 3 sprays and it's almost black. See that? It's almost black already. So now, obviously, if you want to go faster than this, you're super impatient like I am. Boom. Put a harder spray down. Get that coverage much better. Found that I take my time and I hit it from lots of different angles. So you notice I'm turning the model in all different angles to make sure that black primer gets in all the nooks and crannies. I don't want it anywhere else. I also got to do the base. Bases are always hard because there's usually a model on top of it covering stuff up. So if you have to, take your paintbrush and get it in the areas that you simply couldn't get with your airbrush. Just do that with like a big hobby brush like this. Look at that. It looks like a snaggletooth tiger. Very cool. All right. So I'm going to get that on there like this. Do we have any questions at this point?
Everybody's freaking out over your 50 PSI right now.
It might be overkill. It's so funny because I told Ken over at Badger, I was teaching some classes at Adepticon, and I was like, yeah, so I'm getting my students to all go to 40 PSI. Aaron, Lovejoy, you can't do that. You can't do it. Like, that's it. Like, people, okay, you can do it because you're a professional, but other people can't do it. Guess what? I'm having students come up to me all the time. They're like, dude, I switched to 40 PSI and it's friggin' amazing. If you don't know, I had a student in a class in where was that? Northern California, yeah, at Game Castle, and he had never touched an airbrush, and this is like a airbrushing boot camp, or no, it wasn't an airbrushing boot camp. It was a Maximus boot camp. So we were painting this figure, super cool figure, and he had never touched an airbrush before in his life. First day, he borrowed the airbrush and the compressor from us. I set him up at 40 PSI. I didn't say a word. The first day, it was a train wreck. I was like, okay, I feel really bad. Second day, he got it, and he was freaking amazing. Like, he didn't know the difference between the air pressures. So if you want really fine dots and everything, really, and you can control it really well, 40 psi, like work your way up, inch your way up, 2 psi a day, you know, just like slowly work your way up, trick yourself into doing it at a higher psi. But I'm telling you, I used to think about the little dot patterns, the speckle patterns all the time. How do I get rid of those? Do I glaze them by hand? Do I glaze them with the airbrush? No, just don't get speckles at all. Like, do the higher pressure. It's awesome. Okay, so that being said, if you're running at 20 or lower, don't worry about it, but you can have bigger dots. There you have it. Okay, so I'm going to spray the top of this. And I think I'm going to go super fast. I'm going to do all the things I told you not to do right before. Just get that. If you notice, though, I'm always in the motion. Let me pull my camera out. I'll show you kind of my airbrushing motion, the motion of the ocean. Look at that cool pizza dungeon. I got this when we got in our car accident in January. I got this glass. Ron was like, "Sorry about your art collection. Here's a glass." And this is the best thing I've used this every day. It's my washout cup. And I'll show you that here in a minute when we change these colors. So if you notice, when I'm airbrushing, I'm always in a motion of going off the miniature. I don't sit there and hit like this. Sometimes I do, because I know what I'm doing. But you should, when you're airbrushing, always go off of the miniature like this. Always be in the motion of getting away from trouble. So if something happens, I'm already in this motion. If I'm just like this and something happens, I got to go, "Oh no," and move. So we'll just kind of go like this. Get this black on real quick. So now we have to wait 24 hours for this to fully cure. Primer takes 24 hours to cure, period. Any kind of primer you use, at least 24 hours. I oftentimes prime my miniatures, and I have my work is set a week out or more. So they'll all already be primed, and they'll already be cured completely when I start painting. Now, that's not to say right now we could just start painting this thing, but I guarantee you, especially with metal models, I guarantee you the primer will start rubbing off because it hasn't had a chance to adhere to the model. So we're just going to wait 24 hours. Just kidding.
I was like, what?
The Reaper Vex also works as a very good blow drying device. So you can dry your miniature this way. Another trick to not waiting 24 hours is blow dry it, but I'm not going to put you through that. If you drop your miniature, you know that it will be like probably the best thing you've ever painted. So drop it often. Okay, so now I'm going to change colors. I barely have any black primer in here. Usually this stuff is like gold. I buy it by the big quart or gallon case, like whatever the biggest case of Steiner Rose I can get, I get that. So I'm just going to spray this out into my cup. So two things I'm looking for, or one thing I'm looking for. I'm looking for that spray, the cone of spray that comes out. Now remember I talked about that little glass jar that you could get? You stick your airbrush inside there and then nothing sprays up. I don't like that because I can't see the spray. So when you first get your Vex airbrush, I hit the camera again. Take some water, just regular tap water or whatever you got, and spray it out of your airbrush. There's not going to be a clog. It's the perfect medium, right? So spray it out. Watch the spray, and you can't really see it very good. Let's see if I do it right over. See right there, right over the black cap. So that's the sign of a healthy nozzle. My cone is perfectly circular, and it flares out. It's very strong spray. That's what I want to see. So however it's sprayed out, memorize that. When you first get your airbrush, spray water through it. Memorize what the spray looks like. You don't have to memorize it perfectly, but for those of you like me who forget easily, like videotape it with your phone or something. So spray that out. If you notice something like this, so I'm going to spray a little bit more in there. If you notice the spray kind of undulating, it gets strong and then it tapers back and it gets strong again.
Make sure you're moving your head back.
Okay. Oh, am I getting too close?
Yep.
Oh, man. So when I spray, if it looks like kind of like this, and then it kind of like, it does that little undulating thing, if you're looking at the cap of that Steiner Res, that means that you're clogging. So that's one indication that your nozzle is starting to clog. 9 times out of 10, you're still spraying paint fine. But that's an indicator that you're clogging. So watch that. So this is why I use my Reaper Dungeon cup. I think this was actually for this year, and it just never happened. So this is a really cool cup for spraying it. I mean, it would actually be a really cool cup to drink out of. But anyways, so I run that through, spray it through. I also use a product called Spray Through. This is made by Badger. It's not really for cleaning your airbrush. It's for running through in between colors. And what this does is it keeps your paint from drying in the nozzle. Like, it keeps things lubricated in there. I guess it does kind of clean too, but it's more for just keeping your nozzle from drying out. And what we're fighting, not only are we fighting paint drying on the outside tip of your nozzle, we're fighting it drying on the inside of your nozzle. And you can't see inside your nozzle. So that's why you're looking at sprays to see if you got a good strong spray. So I got that run through, the spray through there, and I just spray it on out. I'm going to go ahead and run another, a couple more sessions. Like, usually I just do this. I spray it and I let it run out till it's clear. There's still paint in there, but at least it's clear for now. I'll spray it out again. I take my needle back just a little bit, about 1/8 of an inch. I'll lock it back down and spray it out the rest of the way. Now I push my needle back in. Now, if you notice, to get the needle in and out, or to move it at all, you need to turn this chuck right here in this thing. Once you got the needle back in, don't ever like push it, jam it in. You just want to put it in lightly. Turn that chuck, and now it sprays perfectly. So another thing you want to remember, when you've got paint in this cup, don't ever pull your needle out. Because what you just did is you took paint from up here and pulled it all the way back through your airbrush. And now you got a problem because you got paint all through your airbrush. I've cleaned out my cup pretty well. There's still a little bit of paint on there, but I've cleaned it off enough to where I can wipe my needle off. So I just wipe that off. There's still a little bit of black paint in here. If I want to get that out, I can use my paper towel and just sort of shove it down in there. Twist that.
Head.
Oops. Oh, shoot. That fell out. And we got it. So our airbrush is clean, or clean enough. The only time I do a major cleaning of my airbrush is if I'm going from a color like white to red, where it's really going to adversely affect the next color. In this case, we're just going to use white. So it's right here. Like, where did my white primer go? All right, so again, we're using white Stynylrez primer. Right there, boom. Can't see it because I've used this bottle so much, it literally has rubbed off. So I'm going to put this white in. Now, there's a little bit of black still in there, but it's not enough to change my white adversely. So I'm okay with this. So we'll take the Sophie first. Let me zoom in on this girl here so you get kind of close up look. And once we get this primer on, we're going to switch back and I'm going to take the Vex apart and put it back together again, because that's something you need to know how to do. Because once you get to the point where you're like, at the end of your first airbrushing session, you're going to freak out because you don't know how to clean this thing. So being able to take it apart and put it back together is very important. And we'll have that on video here so you can come back and view it anytime you want. So let me get this dialed in. So this is Sophie. She's primed black. Now this is what's called a zenithal prime. So basically what I'm doing is I'm pre-lighting the miniature, and I'm telling myself what's important, what areas I want highlighted more, you know, maybe picking out some details and stuff. I get a really good view of the contrast, and this is a great way to start your miniatures. I start every miniature this way. So get this, I got my white paint in there, and I'll just start spraying. Now with the black, I went from all different angles. I was like this, I was over here, I was right there. I went from every angle possible because I wanted black everywhere. In this case, I went white just in the highlights, just in my midtones and my highlights. Now the only place maybe I wanted a little bit more is maybe in the face. So I don't want her face to go completely black. So I'm going to start by just spraying the underside of her face. Now, if you were thinking airbrushes are only for big old demons like this, you're wrong. Because I'm going to show you on Sophie, and then I'm going to grab a smaller figure and show you on that. So, oftentimes I just test out on my finger. So, you see I sprayed barely any paint right there. So, let me spray more. So, like that would be at 100%. This is at like 10%. Something you learn in my online classes is my 10% sprays and how to control those. And that is like, once you get that, you have full control over your airbrush. So, all right. So I'll do a hard spray just to make sure everything's running through there really good. I'll do a couple test sprays on my finger. And then I'm going to spray the bottom side of her face white, but it will actually look gray. So I made it a little bit lighter. I think she's wearing gloves. Is she wearing gloves? Yeah, I think so. Well, she's wearing gloves today, so I'm not going to worry about her arms or anything else. I just sprayed the bottom side of her face a little bit gray, or a little bit white. So now we're going to go from the top. And I'm spraying down like this, about a 45-degree angle from the model, and I'll spray all the way 360 around the model. So do another hard spray. Make sure white is one of those colors that will start dry tipping. So like paint will dry out on the tip of the airbrush. You need to constantly be removing that. You'll see me remove this in my videos on Miniature Monthly. I remove them constantly, and I leave all that in the video footage because I want you to know that I clean the tip like 12 times when I prime that miniature. So it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but it is a big deal if you're trying to be precise. So I'm going to come in from a 45-degree angle from the top. I'm about 4 inches away, so I'm not like right on top of it. And I'm just going to start spraying. I'm doing the same thing. I'm spraying and I'm moving across the miniature and off the miniature. So I'm spraying at the top of the wings, the top of her head. See, you can already see all this detail. That's super awesome. So I'll just spray it. I slowly build up my color. I'm going to turn this around. This paint is already dry. It's such a thin layer, it's already dry, which is really nice, as opposed to the black layer that we had to wait and let dry. So I'm going to spray on here. If you notice, I'm hitting the tops of the model more than I'm hitting the bottom, like these bottom legs. But notice, Sophie has these really nice calves. These are Bryce Coconor calves. If you don't know that joke, it's hilarious. But anyway, okay, question.
Oh shoot. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold on.
Do you find that you have to clean more when you're spraying primer versus a normal paint?
Yes. But I find that I'm doing constant preventative maintenance, like the dry tip removal. I'll do that constantly with regular paint too, because it just sneaks up on you. And I figure I hate doing it, so I figure if you're constantly doing it, like it will never happen, But with white primer, it's ridiculous. It's literally like if I'm doing an army, and I have 50 models, I will clean my dry tip 50 to 100 times on those 50 models. So that's 1 to 2 times per model. So, maybe I'll do the front, airbrush that, clean the dry tip, do the airbrush the back.
All right. And then at the end of your paint session, do you completely tear down? Like, do you fully clean your airbrush?
Yes. So I clean, what?
No, go ahead.
Oh, so I got the eye roll. I don't know what I did. So I clean, I'm actually looking at the wrong camera too. So I clean my airbrush daily. But I had a friend who actually cleaned his airbrush till it broke. He's a microbiologist, my best friend in the world. And John, if you're watching this, yeah, I'm talking about you. He cleaned his airbrush so much that it actually wrecked the airbrush. He just stripped it of metal and everything. So I clean my airbrush every day. I'm going to show you how to do that. And then there's also a monthly clean where I go more deep clean. So that helps me for 2 things. The daily clean keeps it clean, keeps things running good. And then the monthly clean, unless it's been a really heavy month of airbrushing or I did a lot of priming, maybe I'll do a heavy clean right after that. But usually it's once a month that I do a heavy cleanup, and then daily that I do my main cleanup, but it's not like I'm not spending an hour on my cleaning. It's like 10, 15 minutes at the end of my session. Is that it?
And one more.
One more.
If you get paint into the body of your airbrush,
throw it away, start over.
Should you use an ultrasonic cleaner or nothing?
Okay, so here's the funny thing with ultrasonic cleaners, and I was actually corrected by a student. That's why you teach these classes, so the students can tell you you're wrong. But I never claimed to be right. Ultrasonic cleaners work great for cleaning the outside of your airbrush. And that's it. So anything on the inside, good luck. It might clean it, it might not. I found that nozzles, 9 times out of 10, when somebody says, I've had my nozzle in an ultrasonic cleaner for 2 days and it's still sputtering or, there's still something wrong. I tell them that their nozzle's dirty, and they don't believe me, and then I tell them how to fix it, and then they're like, oh yeah, it sprays fine now. So the cheaper ultrasonic cleaners have a tendency not to clean the inside of tiny holes like that. So if you have paint all the way back here, if you have a regular ultrasonic cleaner and you want to get like the medical grade ones, that will clean everything. No problem. But most people don't get that. They get the cheapest one they can find right on Amazon. That's what I do. And it doesn't work. So it works great on the outside. Also, Badger will actually nullify your warranty if you use an ultrasonic cleaner. So be very careful on that. Ultrasonic cleaners have a tendency to take off chrome plating and stuff, which a lot of airbrushes are chrome plated. That between your cleaner and the ultrasonic can be really hazardous to your airbrush's health. So be careful. I use a pipe cleaner, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. I use a pipe cleaner if I get stuff in the back of the airbrush, and that's one thing I only do once a month because the pipe cleaners are really bad on the inside of your airbrush. If all your internals are brass, and even the Teflon pipe cleaner can scrape the inside of your airbrush. So you got to be real careful. I do it once a month. That's it. And it seems to work pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to continue airbrushing this. If you have questions, ask. So you might see a couple things. So I'm seeing a speckle right there. That's going to happen. Get over it. We're spraying white. White is notoriously speckly, but if you notice, my airbrushing is not too speckly. That's higher air pressure, and the Stynylrest primer is awesome. So we'll just keep spraying on this. And I've built up sort of some highlights on the back of her. Liz is laughing, so someone probably just asked a really funny question, or they're making fun of me. One of the two, which is totally okay. Like
someone just said, has anyone ever told you that you sound like Jonah Hill?
No, but I've gotten, okay, that's a new one, but I've gotten Fred Durst. I could be Jonah Hill.
No.
Oh, I did? Really?
You sound like Jonah Hill.
No, I know. I've never heard that.
Okay.
But people tell me I look like Fred Durst.
Yes.
That's what I said.
Look like. It's not the same as
Well,
sound.
cool. One day I'm going to be famous. I swear to God. Even maybe after I'm dead or something, one of these goofy videos will go viral or something. So I was talking about her calves, her Bryce Kokenauer calves. So we're going to spray a little bit right down there. And if you notice, I keep doing hard sprays because what's happening is when I pull back, I'm noticing not as much paint came out as the last time. That's micro paint growing on my needle, or little micro clogs happening. They happen constantly. But see, now I can spray that really light spray because I did this hard spray. Boom. So if I keep that nozzle constantly clear, I don't have problems clogging very much. I do eventually, but I have less problems. So I'm going to bump up these highlights on the wings. That's looking pretty good. Right there. We're going to get those calves because I think those calves will look really cool. And I think when this is painted, it would be cool if they were highlighted, maybe not super strong, but a little bit. So, oops, I missed. I hit the bottom. So I'll do those calves just like that. Now, I messed up. I hit the bottom of her shoe, but I actually think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to hit the bottom of the other shoe. You never make mistakes. You just make oopsies. So now we'll switch it back to the front. I'm going to spray her front side again. So usually I have a bunch of these models. So I'm going to set this one down, let it kind of dry, let it percolate because the paint always gets a little darker as it dries. And I'll start on the next one. But in this case, we don't have a next one, at least not yet. So I'm going to keep spraying this. Notice I keep my airbrush is far away, like 4 inches. I'm going to hit the top of this wing right here, the top of her helmet, top of the other wing, down her shirt, on that leg. I'm going to hit the top of her sword. Just building up my lights. Maybe the top of her hilt right here would get a little bit more highlight. But you notice, okay, I'm using the general purpose airbrush and I'm getting, even at far away, I'm getting pretty small sprays. So I've got a really controlled airbrush, but it's spraying primer and it's working awesome. It's not clogging. Again, good for the beginner. You know, most people, they start airbrushing, they quit because they're always clogged. It's going to happen even with this airbrush, but it will happen less often. And if you control your spray, control your airbrush really well, watch for those clogs. You're going to be clog free most of the time. So now we see it's starting to really flesh up. I can inch my highlight down the side here. I'm gonna hit her clock and booty right there. I'm gonna hit the back of this wing. I'm gonna hit the tops of those calves again. I think that looks pretty good. What do you think, Liz? I think it looks great. Yeah. She can't see. So okay, we got another question.
Do you prefer?
Hit me.
Do you prefer white primer or white ink?
At first, white primer, and I'll tell you the reason why. White ink is opaque, and actually, thank you for asking, because we're going to use white ink here in a second. So, white ink is opaque, but it builds up a lot slower. You won't get as strong of a white highlight without the white primer. So, since Stynylrez sprays so smoothly, and with my higher air pressure is even smoother than that, I can build up very quickly my white zenithal, and then when I do my final lighting, I'm going to do that with white ink, and then it's like crack-a-lackin'. Take it to the bridge. Liz, question.
Okay, question. I see you aren't using the needle protector tip thing.
Right.
Is it because you're confident you won't drop it?
Yes.
Or for some other benefit?
So I will tell you, if you're new to airbrushing, your needle will bend while you're not airbrushing. I guarantee it. You're going to drop it. You're going to, it's going to slip out of your hand. You're not going to be paying attention. A lot of people, including myself, have those little, it's like a little holder and you stick your airbrush in there. Well, it's got little plastic on both sides and you ding it and you're pushing, it will bend the needle. So I'm very confident. I just, I pay a lot of attention to my needle. And that helps, so I don't have it. But look at, so this needle right here, it's not clogged by any means. If I spray air, but see, none of that tip comes off. So I just come in. That means it's starting to dry tip on me. Now I just use my fingernails. The other thing I like about this general purpose needle, I can get really tight detail, but also it's a little bit more robust. It's not as thick as the Patriot 105, but it's getting there, right? If you look at the needle, the real detail needle, it's even thinner, and this one will have a tendency to bend quicker than this one. So that's another reason why I like the general purpose needle, because it's harder to bend. But if I drop this right now, it will bend, and then this airbrush session is over. Luckily, I have a second one. But so yeah, I don't worry about it. The other thing is, though, now I say it's because I want to be able to clean off the airbrush. I could put it on this way because 9 times out of 10, when I want to do a good dry tip clean, I take the tip off anyways because I want to get the pads of my fingers in there and I just rub that paint right off. Like you can just kind of twist. And the pads of your fingers are actually better than your fingernail because your fingernail, if you got real like monkey nails like me, you could actually bend that needle if you push too hard or something. But I'm just really confident with, like, I haven't had a problem bending needles, and quite honestly, I've airbrushed with bent needles. Like, you do what you got to do when you're in the business, right? Like, I had one needle that was like in an S shape, and it kept going, so I was like, let's just go with it. When I'd spray, it was like a little bit off to the right, but I just learned to be off to the right a little bit. It's like shooting a gun or something, Okay, so let's, I know what you're asking, but Aaron, Sylphies are so big. They're like 28 millimeter. What about smaller models? Well, here's the Dodo from your Reaper swag set, which, by the way, I'm painting this model because this model is awesome. So I'm going to show you putting a zenithal prime on this, and I'm going to be really precise about where I put my lights. Liz, question.
All right.
All right.
Have you completely switched over to using the Vex, and you are just not using the Sotar or the Patriot 105 anymore because you don't need them?
So when I talked with Ken, when we first started developing this airbrush, he said, I'm thinking of, how about a hybrid airbrush, like both. And I said, if I love my Sotar 2020 and I love my Patriot 105, and if you can't meet or beat both of those, I don't want it. I don't need it. And he did. I haven't touched my other airbrushes since I got this one. So I'm super happy. I couldn't be happier. And this airbrush, like I said, it clogs a little bit slower. So someone who's fastidious about keeping my nozzle clean, like I've gotten really lazy, and Liz will attest to this. I've gotten really lazy. Like this airbrush was dirty when I started this. She's like giving me the look, like, yeah, you
I clean it
SOB.
how many times?
Yeah, she's cleaned it a bunch of times because I just won't clean it. So one time I had left primer in it overnight. It dried completely. So when I pulled the needle out, there was a tunnel down here of dried paint. Like paint couldn't even get out of the airbrush. It was like, you know, there's a hole through it, but no paint could get out. So anyways, I'm really bad. I've gotten really lazy because of this airbrush. That being said, don't be like me. Like actually clean your airbrush and be good to it. It's just, I found that I can get away with so much more now because it clogs slower. And I like that. I just want to be lazy. Like that is my goal in life, is just let me be lazy. Okay, so we're doing the dodo here. I'm going to spray. I'm going to start, do a hard spray. Start from about 4 inches away. This one's a lot easier because he's so small and so cute. Okay, so I've gotten that initial spray on. He's lit, right? Lit like a Christmas tree. Now, I'm probably going to paint him. If I leave it like this, I'm probably going to paint him a darker color scheme or like something not yellow because there's too much black down here. If I'm going yellow, I'm going to spray some white down here as well and get rid of most of my black. Or maybe spray a brown or something, but we're not going to go into that. That's more color theory and all that stuff. So now I'm going to start spraying up a few highlights here. I'm going to hit those little beads, his little necklace there, which is really cool. I'm trying to hit the beads without hitting his chest. I think I did that pretty good. Hit his head, hit his back here. We got another question. Go.
Some people store their airbrushes in liquid. Is that something that you've tried?
No, I don't know. So what will happen when you're done airbrushing? You clean it out thoroughly. I mean, you got this thing clean. I've had people Sonic clean their airbrushes. I mean, they got all the paint out of there. There's always still paint in your airbrush. So what will happen is you let it sit overnight. So I'm gonna grab this one, which is actually clean. You let it sit overnight, and you go to airbrush the next day. You pull the trigger, and nothing happens. You can't pull it back. The needle is stuck in the forward position. And what happens here is little bits of painty water are in your airbrush still, and they'll dry and they'll solidify, and now your needle's stuck. So what I do, when you get your airbrush, you'll notice this too. Let me take the cap off so you can actually see. So when you get your airbrush, your needle, oh, this one doesn't even have a needle in it. That would help. Don't laugh at me, laugh with me. Okay, so the needle's sticking out the front of this airbrush. So what I'm gonna do is at night, I pull the needle back. About a 1/4 inch. Now it's safe. So I drop this. If I have the cover on this way, if I drop it, it doesn't matter. I can hit the front of it. Boom, I'm good to go. Also, it won't stick to the front. So that little bit of residue always happens. I could see maybe, especially if you're really dirty like me, maybe putting it in liquid, the paint will never dry, but it seems like it dries anyways. Like it will find a spot to settle in and then it just turns to sludge. So I don't do that. I just clean out my airbrush fairly good, make sure the needle is clean, and run a bunch of things of my cleaner through it, and I'm good. Pull the needle back, and I wait till the next day. So I don't do that. Long story short, I don't do that.
How do you feel about colored primers?
I like them. So Badger makes several different colors. I use black and white, but they have like shades of brown. A lot of them are like military kind of colors, so they're like a little bit more pastel and earthy, but they're awesome. So if you're doing a tank, let's say, and you want to paint rust on it first, like I have a weathering video on Miniature Monthly. Go figure. We have lots of videos on Miniature Monthly, by the way, that teach you how to paint. $5 a month. That's all we ask. Anyways, check it out. Patreon.com//Miniature Monthly. Anyways, quick ad there. So they have lots of different colored primers. So if you wanted to do rust first, they have like a orangish red. You could spray that down first and you've got, everything looks like rust. And then you can do techniques, salt or silicone or whatever, make a mask. And it looks like chipped paint has come off and it's rusty underneath. So that's a great thing to do too. Also, you've got people like, and I know a lot of you know and love James Wapple. He does the colored primers and like he'll specifically do colors that will enhance the colors he's going to paint next. So if you go deeper into color theory and stuff, you know, you're putting greens down because you're doing flesh colors later. I don't know. So there's lots of reasons that you could use those colored primers. They're great because they're primer. They're just colored. So use all your tools to your advantage. If you need that, do it. Or if you want to try it, do it. You know, Badger sells a set of a bunch of different colored primers. You know, you can sample them and see which ones you like. Personally, I mostly use the white and black. Rarely ever do you use gray. You know, it's just I like the zenithal prime and I like the control that it gives me. And I'm so fast with wet blending, like it just doesn't matter. So, anyways, yeah. They do colored primers. I would totally use them. Totally recommend them. So this is the other guy, the other little dude from the Sophie set. So I'm just going to put, he's going to be, I don't know. Maybe I want his face a little bit brighter as well. So I'll spray a little bit from the bottom. You notice I just hit his face. I didn't hit anything else. Keep putting this up. Now you can go as harsh or as not harsh as you want with the zenithal prime. So if you notice on his hat, I want to leave it really dark on the edges and really bright in the middle. So I'm just going to come in closer, and you see my airbrush is much closer now. And I have to really control my spray. Do another hard spray just to make sure I got control. Boom. Really, really bright to really, really dark. So if I wanted to put like a black wash over this and call it a black hat, I could do that. It would be awesome. I'll hit the front of his little spyglass up by his face a little bit brighter than the end because I want to drive focus towards his face. So you see with my zenithal prime, I can actually start driving the focus wherever I want it to go. I'll do the back of his hat here, and his shirt. Do a hard spray. Back of his hat will be really bright white to really dark again. So I'm going to come back in here and do that, his spyglass. I had mentioned in my Vex first impressions video, which, by the way, if you haven't seen it, go to my artist gallery on the ReaperCon live Discord, and I've actually got a link to it. It's actually kind of funny. But anyways, I asked somebody to paint an eyeball in there. So let's say I'm going to do that eventually. So I could come in. Now I'm going to be really focused. I'll do a hard spray to make sure my airbrush is clean.
Somebody just said, is it just me or has Aaron been possessed by the spirit of Billy Mays?
Billy Mays. I don't know who that is.
What?
Billy Hayes Mays? Billy Mays Hayes?
No, the infomercial guy.
Oh my gosh, dude, that's hilarious. Yeah.
To say.
Well, I did do a lot of cocaine
It's
before this. No, I'm
over.
just kidding. I didn't do that. I didn't. So look. Okay, so everyone who got this swag set knows how small that is. I just hit a highlight on that. I left the outside ring still black. It's got a little bit of overspray on it, but that's actually pretty tight. This is what the Vex is all about. I did a really tight highlight on that on my zenithal prime. Bam. I almost said something I wasn't supposed to say. I stopped.
You didn't.
I just stopped right there. Okay, so here we go. I'm trying really hard for this not to be an infomercial on the Vex, but the thing is, the Vex is freaking awesome, and I'm super excited about it. So you just can't stop the passion police. You know what I'm saying? Like it is what it is. This is an awesome airbrush, and I'm sorry, but you know, I can't help it that they created a cool airbrush, and I can't help it that Reaper was smart and picked it up. I'm super, super excited about all these things. So I'm going to hit a little bit down on his shoes, and then we're going to call it a day on this model because I'm sure you're really bored with watching me do this. So I hit the shoes too hard. That's okay. I don't care. I'll paint them whatever color I want. So you don't have to be exactly perfect. I'm going to do the back of this gun.
Could you have hit that highlight with the Patriot or the Sotar?
Maybe not the Patriot, the Sotar for sure, but I wouldn't be doing it with primer, that's for sure. So you notice I've got some bubbles in my cup now. So that means that I've been messing around too long. I probably got a little bit of dry tip going on, or I've got a little clog happening inside my airbrush. Now I've been hitting really tight stuff, so I wasn't paying attention. But as soon as I see that, I'm gonna clean my dry tip off, and I'm gonna spray out a little bit, and I should see those bubbles go away. They're gonna stay there for a minute, but it's okay. Okay, so we've got this primer on. I'm going to spray out this primer, and we're going to switch to an ink, and I'm going to show you the Vex spraying an ink. So we're almost at an hour and a half.
Yeah, it's 10.
I could talk, dude. We're going till like 3 in the morning.
I
Go!
told them to let me know when it's gonna
We're gonna do this, guys. Actually, I got to give you a little bit of time to get over and get your online classes. Remember, 50% off. There's your infomercial right there.
Yeah.
But honestly, my airbrushing classes are my most popular, both online and in real life. And I think I spent so long learning how to airbrush. I just think it's awesome that you could actually learn it all in a month. I mean, granted, you're still going to have to practice and stuff, but you're going to be able to watch video afterwards. You know, you got things to replay. So, I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that deal for sure. Also, tell a friend. I'd appreciate it. Anyways, cool. If we hit 200 people signed up for the class, I will literally marry Liz. I mean, I'm gonna anyways,
What?
but.
Yes.
I'm just, okay, this is, it's full on infomercial time. 200, here we go. All right, so now we're going to do inks. What are you smiling about?
That made me happy.
Oh, okay. Well, there we have it.
Does Aaron ever... Hold on. Oh.
I hold on all the time. Hold on for dear life.
I just can't.
Sometimes I hold my airbrush with 2 fingers and I just do that. Okay.
Do you ever use backflow, like cupping the?
Right. So what they're talking about is, I think you pull your needle back, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
I mean,
to
otherwise
mix-
you
to
literally,
mix the paint and stuff?
yeah. Otherwise you literally stab yourself with the needle in this case. So I'd pull my needle back like 1/8 of an inch, so I'm not pulling it all the way back through the thing. And then you put your finger over the nozzle and you spray. And what that does is it back bubbles. It forces air. Air can't go forwards. So where does it go? Not in your finger. That's crazy. It goes backwards. So here's my problem with that. It works, obviously. Some people mix their paints that way. Like they'll put 2 or 3 colors in, they'll back bubble, and it just blah, 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 you know, it works. And 9 times out of 10, it will totally work. But the problem is, so a lot of people back bubble when they're clogged. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to the clog won't come forward, so they're trying to push it backwards, right? Problem is, if they push it backwards, where do you think it's going to go when the air goes forwards again? Like, it's not coming out the top of the cup. It's going right back in your airbrush and clogging you. So if you're trying to do it to keep your airbrush from clogging, probably not a good idea. Like I much prefer taking my needle out, like rinsing it out real good, take my needle out and clean it that way. If it's that clogged. If you're just mixing paint, that would work. But you still got that thing, like if there's little particles inside your nozzle that you don't know about and you're driving them backwards, you're dislodging them, driving them backwards in your airbrush, and then immediately it will come forward. Like there's only one place those particles can go. And guess what? Particles love clogging your airbrush. So I don't do that. I just never found a need for it. Some people do it. And this is one of those things. Airbrushes are just like paintbrushes. Everyone has they like a different feel to the airbrush. Like maybe you get this or you try one of these out and you're just like, it's not for me. It doesn't feel right in my hand. Okay, that's it. The same with a paintbrush. Like I like Raphael 8404s. Some people absolutely love Winsor Newton 7s. I don't like the Winsor Newton 7. It doesn't work for me the way the Raphael works. So an airbrush is just as personal. The thing is, I think we designed this airbrush to be really good in a general way and then really good in a high-end way. So, you know, despite some of your preconceived notions or whatever, your styles or whatever, I think it will be good for the majority of people. Some people, again, won't like it, but that's just the way life is. So I've got my what's it called? My train of thought just off on some other planet or whatever. So we've got Liquitex white ink, titanium white. So titanium white is awesome. This stuff, I've tried different ink brands. So I've tried the Dalerani. I've tried, what's the other one called? I can't remember. There's a bunch of different brands. Dr. Martin, I don't know. So the titanium white from Liquitex seems to spray the smoothest consistently all the time. It is a really smooth white, titanium white spray. Also, it's titanium white. It's the whitest white you can get. Also, it's a little bit semi-gloss, which makes it even whiter. So a little bit of semi-gloss in your, let's remember this for normal painting, a little bit of semi-gloss in your final brightest highlight. Like if I was painting my nose and I wanted to put that highlight right there, that really bright one, I might semi-gloss just that little highlight right there. Nothing else on my nose. And that will actually reflect light and make your white even whiter. Wow, that was awesome. Just kidding. It might have been awesome. Maybe somebody out there is going to make like some really cool highlights with semi-gloss, and I'm going to be like, yeah, that's right. Okay, so in this is when I start adjusting my paint job for like directional light. So in this case, I don't think that this figure would look good with the light coming from this side. I think it would look kind of weird. I don't know. She's got her sword over here. It seems like this is the money shot right here in this pocket. So I'm going to spray titanium white only in this pocket. So let's test it out on my finger again. You probably want to wear gloves, but I always look like I have some sort of disease because I have all these little spots all over me. That's where I'm testing. So you'll find with inks spray better. They clog less, far less. They still clog, but they clog far less than regular acrylics. So these inks will be awesome. Even the white's no exception. So I'm going to spray a little bit on her hat. So I'm just building that color up a little bit. I think hopefully you can see that actually happening. A little bit on her face, right up on her chest. That's a strong part of the mouth. See that? You can already see the white is like, that's crack-a-lackin' right there. Now, you don't want to put this everywhere because you know what happens. You put a highlight everywhere and you got a highlight where? Nowhere. You just got bright white. So we got that. I'm going to do her hand. Top of that, her scabbard, and a little bit on the top of the sword. That's super bright. Now, to finish this off, it looks a little bit weird that her wing is not super bright either. So I'm going to hit that wing, but I'm not going to hit the other one. Okay, so now it looks like I have a spotlight on that side of the model. That's awesome. I like it. I'm going to paint this model up.
That's super pretty.
For sure. I'm thinking about doing another stupid thing, but I'm not going to say anything. All right. We'll see. Okay, so on the back, we got to pick a light source. So on this one, I think the same side will be good, but you could pick the other side. Here's the deal. When someone's holding your model this way, they look at it and they're like, wow, this looks awesome. All the lighting is the same. When they turn it around, if all your lighting is the same, even if it's on the other side, looks great. Nobody knows the difference. Nobody can see both sides of your model at the same time. So just for the fun of it, let's do the lighting on this side. So it's on the exact opposite side. So I'm going to put a little bit at the top of her wing here. Now on the back of the figure, I always go lighting a little bit less than the front of the figure. You have to light the back, but I always do it a little bit less than the front because, hey, it's the back, right? On this one, since these wings are so close to each other, I'm going to do a little bit on the other side as well. They're coming from the same direction. And then a little bit on her skirt there. And a little bit on that leg. Only because those are Bryce Coconor calves right there. Just beautiful calves. Man has beautiful calves. Talk to Barbara Jackson. Anyways, so that's how I would like that. Let's do this little guy, and I want to get to this bigger dragon, so I'm just going to do him. I'm not going to worry about the other guy, or maybe I'll do both. I don't know. So just do it real quick. I'm going to do the back side of him a little bit, do a secondary light. maybe coming from both sides. A little bit on his nose there. Hit those balls. Gotta hit those balls. That's what they say.
Oh my god. Here.
That's
No, no.
Well, nobody painted a model and just didn't paint the balls around, you know, the neck of that dodo.
Oh my god.
I don't know. Okay, so we do this. Boom, boom, boom. So this part, I always love this part when we get to the titanium white, because since I'm only doing, ooh, this is a competition model now. I'm only doing small areas, so it goes really, really fast. When you're painting the black, it takes forever to get it all black. And then when you do the back, boom, boom, boom. Okay, so now I've got some really nice zenithal primes. So that's the Reaper Vex on zenithal primes. Normally I would have switched to my Sotar for the inks, because it will spray a tighter beam basically. Ooh, you know what? Let's do his little spyglass here. I just brought that highlight up a little bit. Still hit it perfectly in the middle there. That's cool. So that's about maybe no more than an eighth of an inch across, but I hit half of that eighth of an inch. So I think badgers are supposed to be an eighth of an inch circle spray. So I hit half of that with the Vex with its general purpose airbrush, but I also did all the priming. So pretty cool. Okay, so now got all that. Questions, answers. Liz has to pee. Now we're gonna do a poll.
I tried really hard.
She tried really hard. She was like, I don't want anybody to know. If I have to pee, I don't want anybody to know. So we're gonna take a poll while she's gone. Is it number one or number two? I don't know if there's anything more than number one or number two, but this is the inquiring minds want to know. Now I'm not looking at the chat, so we won't know until she gets back what the consensus was. But if it was betting man, I'd say or number two. So spraying out that white, I'm going to spray my needle juice in there. Spray that out. Ouch, I just stabbed myself. So you got to be a little bit careful. So I've got the cup clean. And now I'm going to take this airbrush apart. Now we're actually starting to run out of time. If I can do this fast enough, I'll spray some on this demon. Otherwise, I will just save it for my online classes. But you can already see that the Vex is like legit throwing down some really tight sprays, and it's, I don't know, it's just awesome. I just love this airbrush. I can't gush enough about it. So I've got this clean. So one thing I do when I'm cleaning my airbrush, I never clean that paint out from the inside of the cup, except for like at the end of the day. So if this was a cleaning in the middle of the day, I would leave that in there, because I find that if I agitate it, all that paint is in a state of being dried. It might come up, but it will go to the bottom of my cup as big chunks and then immediately clog my airbrush with my next color. So if I want to get that out or clean it a little bit more, I just put, oh man, the chat's going crazy, babe. I'm sorry. I mean, if you were timing that, I would go with number one.
Oh my god.
I'm sorry.
What?
I'm just fascinated with pee and poop. It's just, it's a funny word for one, but anyways. Okay, so let's take this airbrush apart. So we've cleaned it off. I'm going to take the needle out. So to take the needle out, I undid the chuck. So if this is your first time getting the Vex, fast forward to this part of this video and watch this again. So I've got that. Actually, I'm going to take apart the other one because it's, no, this one will work. So take that apart. So you don't need to take this part off. Take the needle out. Now you got that. So the back comes off like this. Oh, this is another thing. Your needle comes in and out of your airbrush without taking the back protector off. Most airbrushes, you see guys airbrushing online, whether they're doing classes or just YouTube videos or whatever, they're actually airbrushing like this. And the reason for this is that way they can sort of juice that needle if they're starting to get a clog. So you can kind of move the needle in and out. And sometimes that dislodges a clog and you keep going. So that's one way that guys keep their airbrushes going. But you have to have the back end off to get to the needle. Well, not with the Reaper Vex. And it's the same thing for, oops, you got to take the needle out to put this back in. So it's the same thing with Patriot 105s and Sotars and stuff. And it's one of the reasons I really like those, you know, even over like a Renegade Chrome. So very good feature. You can pull the needle out. So you take this back part off. So we're just going to take this whole thing apart so I can show you where all the parts go and what you got to do. So one thing you'll notice when you take the needle out, that now lets the trigger free. So I can pull it out. You got this little, I looked this up online. I don't know what this part's called. It's the metal twangy thing in the twangity dang. I don't know. It's just this part that we don't know what it's called, and it's a pain in the butt. So you don't want this to fall out. If when you take that needle out and you're washing this out in the sink, sometimes your trigger falls out. You just got to be careful that you put it back in. So the trigger comes out like that. I'm going to pull this part back, and that releases the tension on this little metal part. I'm going to take it out. So that part's very important. Don't lose it. And you're definitely going to watch when I put it back in, because you don't want to put it in wrong because your airbrush will not work. So here's the other parts that you can take apart. Normally I don't take this back part off the airbrush, but I'm going to take it off for you now just to show you what it looks like. And these things are tight. They're so tight. I can't get it out.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. So this is screwed in with like a 1,000,000-foot long screw. So we'll just keep at this. Bear with me. Question.
How do you know where the right adjustment is for the front chuck, the front piece?
What do you mean where the... I don't understand that question.
I don't know. They said that they've removed theirs a few times, so I'm assuming that, like, how do you know that it is back where it's supposed to be?
Oh, so see there's like a little piece right here. Now, if you have a Badger airbrush, sometimes they have like a little black O-ring type thing that goes around there, which does absolutely nothing, by the way. It's just there for aesthetics or to fill that gap or whatever. This one, so when you get these, a lot of times they're tightened really, really tight. I don't know why they do that, but I have these little pliers and I just pop it so it comes loose. And then, because you're going to have to get this off to get your nozzle out. So I'll pull this out. My nozzle falls out completely. They're just setting in there. When you're putting it back on, so let me show you on mine. I'm just going to put it in there like that. As soon as it gets tight, I give it a tight twirl, but not harder than that. So it's on there. Actually, it's on there tighter than it was before. How did I do that? That's so crazy. It was like this before. Anyways, so just tighten it down all the way. Oh, that's because the nozzle's out. The nozzle held it up a little bit. So tighten it down to where it's tight, like finger tight. That's it. Don't worry about getting it any tighter than that, because obviously this nozzle holds that part out just a little bit. And if you start squeezing down on it too tight, what can happen is you can get a micro crack in the tip of your nozzle. And if, like, let's get in a close-up of that nozzle. So you see that nozzle right there. And by the way, I'm videotaping this right now, so there will be like a crystal clear YouTube video that will be up on the Reaper website of this video. So if you can't see it real good on your Zoom right now, don't worry about it, or on Twitch. Don't worry about it, because we are going to, like, this is going to be legit high-def video when we're done. So anyways, you see that little bitty hole right there? I've actually cracked my nozzle. And a good sign of your nozzle being cracked is you'll start having back bubbling when your nozzle is perfectly clean. It just breaks the seal and you're done. So don't tighten down too much, because you can actually force too much pressure on this nozzle and start cracking it. So hand tight is fine. I can't believe I can't get this back part off. I'm going to use my crazy clippers here. Mine's like stuck. Okay, so I can't get the back of this airbrush off. Which means I got to get some better pliers. Anyways, this back part comes out. I wonder if I just do it on this other one. This is where we find out that the back of these Vexes is really tight. And it was a bad idea not to practice this before ReaperCon Live. This is the one I took out before. So that other one's just stuck. I gotta fix that. But okay, so I'm pulling out this back part. Okay, and put these to the side. I guess we're taking this one apart. I'll take that out. Take his little trigger thing out. So now we just have the front of this airbrush. Obviously, this front part comes off. It's the reversible one. This piece doesn't come off, so it's just this. And this is a brand new one, so I've got to
you're doing that, do you know if you can use ceramic glazes in the airbrush?
I don't know. You could try, but that's scary. that just sounds like a permanent clog waiting to happen. Like, how do you clean a ceramic glaze? How does that?
Well, I mean, it's just like paint.
If it's an acrylic paint, go for it. Like, I mean, I'm scared because I've never done it. I mean, I can't, like, I'm really confident. Like, ask me a question about acrylics, and I'm like, bam, we're on there. Ceramic glaze, I'm not familiar with, so I don't know how exactly that would work. I chose the wrong pliers for this job.
Okay.
I had a pair right next to my desk before, and they've disappeared. I thought I put them away, but maybe I didn't. So this bottom part comes off. I've clamped mine on really hard because I don't want any air to leak out. But this part comes off, and then you've got this piece right up here, which is the bottom part of your air area. You never take this off. You never need to take it off. So we've got the whole airbrush apart. This is what it looks like. Kind of set them out. When you have your airbrush at home, when you first get it, ooh, that'll probably work. When you first get your airbrush, I recommend you take it apart. If you have a video camera, videotape it so you can see where all the pieces went, or take pictures as you go. Because you don't want to put anything in backwards or something. That would be bad. So we got that. If you have this pliers, and see, I got this on really tight. I just don't like air leaks. I don't like my air compressor. Like, if you notice, my air compressor hasn't turned on since I stopped using it. That's because there's no leaks at all, period. It's like leak free. So we got that part off. Believe this part should also come off. Again, I would not recommend taking this part apart unless, like, somehow you get ink down in here and it makes your trigger sticky. I hate to sound like a broken record, but in my airbrushing class, I teach you how to not do that, so you never have to worry about it. But this is the part right here. We'll get a little bit closer now that we've gotten it all apart. So that is your airbrush in a nutshell, all taken apart. That's the Reaper Vex. It's broken. So this part, obviously, when your trigger pushes down on this thing, it lets air out. That little thing is has a spring inside. It lets air out. You can actually open this up. I believe from the bottom, there's a little thing. Don't ever do that. Don't ever, ever, ever do that. Because there's a spring in there. It's super tiny. And if it falls out, you're done. Your air won't work. You're going to have to get a new one of these. So don't ever take that thing out. Just don't worry about it. And in that, for that matter, don't ever take this part off. So I'm going to put this back on. So this is how you put everything back together. Get that back on. I'm going to put my quick release. I'm not going to clamp it down really tight because that's just going to take too long. If you are concerned about scratching your Vex, which I am not, I know these Vexes are going to be covered in paint, so I just don't care. Maybe use pliers that have a little bit of rubber grip put on them so that it doesn't scratch your finish. That's all. So you're definitely going to need pliers, though, to get these things off the first time. So I got that on. I'm going to put the front assembly back together. So I've got my nozzle. You just set it in like that. You want to make sure that it's like centered. So not having cockeyed, crooked like that or anything. You just want it right in the middle. It just sits there. Put your top here on, the cover. This will seed that nozzle in very nicely. You see it comes out the front. Put the tip on like that. Now we've got to put the back end in. So here's another part that you never want to take apart. So you can take, this is the chuck. Let me do a little bit more close up on this. So this is your needle assembly area or something. I don't know what it's called. There's a technical word for it. There is another teeny tiny spring inside here. You can get it out by opening up this back end. Don't do that. Just don't do it. You don't need to You really shouldn't be cleaning in there. There shouldn't be any paint in there. Just the only thing that can happen is you lose that spring and now your airbrush doesn't work again. You're buying new parts. So this part right here, you notice there's a little, it's shaped like a D right there. So it's beveled on the side. That matches with this right here. So you put it in right like that. If you're not matched up, it won't go in any further. But if you see, if I turn it and it gets to where it fits, now it goes in and it has a spring to it. I could flick it at Liz here, just pop.
Please don't.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. So we'll put this back end on. Now what I do, I don't leave it out like this. You're going to have the tendency to want to just stick it in like this and start screwing it in. The problem is when it's out like that, it will not be in the right orientation, and sometimes it's hard to get back in. So what I do is I make sure that it's in the right orientation. It goes in like that. I'm going to hold it all the way taut like that, and then twist this on. So put this in like that. So now you've got the back end of your airbrush put in. Now, why would you take that piece off? Well, maybe you accidentally pulled your needle out while there was paint in the cup. So now you know you have paint all the way through here. It's a good idea to take this out and run a pipe cleaner through it. Just, and maybe some water, maybe some of your cleaning solution, whatever, to get that fixed up. Now, this screw is so long. We need like some theme music. We don't need another hero. No. Okay. So
10 minutes, by the way.
10 minutes. Okay. So that popped back in. We've almost got it back together. We're set. We're there. We're there. So it's back in. It's in the right orientation. We're perfect. We're good to go. So you're going to want to, I like having this on right here. So you'll notice that the back end of this, where the needle goes in, there's some cuts in that. And what that does is that allows it, when you put this chuck on, it squeezes those together. But what it also does, when that chuck's off, this is very brittle. So I've actually broken this part. It stinks. When you need the part from Germany, like Badger, everything's in America, so you're good. But when you need something from Germany, like for Harder Steinbeck, sometimes it takes 2 months to get the part and you end up switching airbrushes. So don't do that. So now we're going to put this back in. So this part is important. If you put it in this way, with the curved part going forward, your airbrush will not work. It will fit in there like that, but it's not going to work. So it needs to go in like this, just like that. But if you notice, if I don't pull this part back, it won't go in because there's metal in the way. So I'm going to pull it back like this. I'm going to set this in, and then it's kind of one of those tricky things. I'm going to let that go, and it pushes it forward. So now we've got that in, and it's forward. So you can test it, pull it back. Oops. Pull back, and it pops back in place. So I know that that's in a good spot. Your trigger can only go in one direction. It can only go in. You don't want to put it in sideways like this because that would mess up your needle. There's a hole in it right there for the needle to go through. So that's going to go north and south on your airbrush, just like this. And then you just got to find the little hole that the air goes through. So I push it down, and you see that spring down here is pushing the needle back up. If I've got it in the wrong spot, it doesn't push down, it doesn't pop up. So I want it to, you got to find the spot. It's funny, I've been doing this for so many years and I still don't get it right ever. Okay, so it went in, I'm good. So once that's in and it springs back up, I'm going to take my needle, put it back, put the rear of my airbrush back on, and put my needle back in.
What if the spring doesn't push back?
Then you probably you lost the spring. Or something, the springs can break, after time. They shouldn't break right off the bat, like that would be weird, but it could happen. Or maybe you were careless and you got paint all the way back through here, you pulled paint through and it was a lot. Or you clogged your nozzle so bad that paint shot backwards through your airbrush, because it's got to go somewhere, right? That might get paint into that spring area. That would be a reason to take all that apart. But man, at that point, you're playing with fire because you got to get it back together perfectly. It's not, there's not so many pieces, but it's still, it would be bad.
So So they said that they've never taken it apart or out or anything. But the spring's not moving.
Right. Oh, but the spring.
They haven't taken it out.
Okay, so that would probably mean that. Well, I mean, it could be the spring broke. I mean, these are metal parts and stuff happens. I would open that part up and look inside. The other thing is maybe there's a bunch of paint in there. So if, like, I know that on this one down here, if you get paint in your trigger and then it goes down into there, it can actually make it so that little part goes down and then never comes back up, even though the spring works in it. So that could happen. Back here, I've never seen it happen in the back of the airbrush because that spring's much bigger. But, I mean, stranger things have happened. Like, you know, it's one of those things where you troubleshoot. So now you know if it's in this back part, you know that it's that one little part. There's the only spot that has a spring is right there. It's that part. And then if it's your trigger not going up and down, it's this part right here. You got to take it all apart, do all the things I told you not to do. Clean it out really good, put it back together. You know, like I said, videotape it on your phone. We all got a cell phone with a smartphone with a video camera. Videotape it so you remember how to put it back together, and that's the best bet. Question.
Does the Vex have the trigger travel lock on it for controlled spraying?
Is that this thing? So the Vex has a thing where it goes in the back and you can push that over. So they've got this, or also maybe he was in here before. We've got this. So this controls how far my trigger goes back. I think that's probably what he was talking about. So if I turn it all the way to the front, the trigger doesn't really move at all backwards. Pull it off a little bit, and I can go back a little bit. So again, I run mine fully open. It is what it is. Like if you notice on the prototypes that I used, the needles had to be remanufactured because they didn't have, like, this particular needle was shaped for this airbrush, but it was too short. And so I had to take the back end off the airbrush. Otherwise, it was just always locked closed. It didn't work. But once I took that off, I never stopped using it. So, okay, other questions?
If I own both the SOTAR 2020 and the Patriot, should I be wanting one of these as bad as this video has made me? Yes.
A, it's friggin' sexy. B, you don't need your Patriot or your SOTAR anymore. I mean, maybe there'd be reasons that you do, but I'm very particular in how my airbrush works and what I need out of it. The SOTAR gave me that detail and the control to put little shadows in armpits and stuff at the end of a paint job. I need to be very precise. But guess what? When I got this, I had that precision with this needle. If I need more than that, I switch to this needle. So it's literally you're just switching needles. But quite honestly, I never change from that needle. In fact, if someone wants my black needle, I'm not going to give it to you, but you can have it. So, yeah. So I have lots of Patriots and lots of SOTARs. And like I said, those were my go-tos. If you look back at my miniature monthly videos over time, it was all SOTAR, all Patriot 105. And I was happy as a clam. I don't mind. I've got a quick release. I just switch airbrushes. But this airbrush got rid of both of those airbrushes for me. And it's been, like, I make a lot of money doing commission painting because of this airbrush. Like, I made a lot of money doing with the Patriot and the SOTAR, but I don't need those anymore. Like, again, it's contributing to my laziness. So if you're like me and want to be lazy, get the Vex. And you're going to have really quality work. You know, once you put the time in and you get good at it, good at airbrushing, I think you're going to be really happy. I really do.
You haven't used the any of the Iwata?
I've used a couple Iwatas in my classes, yeah. So I will tell you flat out, and I mean, I like the Vex is, I think, arguably the best airbrush I've ever used. But the Iwata, I think it's the Eclipse, it's whatever the general purpose airbrush is that they have. One of the best airbrushes I've ever used, just the feel of the trigger, how much paint it put out, everything, was an Iwata. Okay? But also, in the same frame of mind, one of the worst airbrushes I've ever used in a class was an Iwata Eclipse too. So a little bit, the manufacturing is a little bit wonky. And like one thing I've noticed with Badger manufacturing, one, it's all made in America, which some people like. Sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't matter. But they're all made in America. So they're made locally, technically. And it's pretty consistent as far as the quality control. You know, every once in a while there'll be a problem. Yeah, that happens with anything that's produced. But I've never had a problem with any of my Badger airbrushes. You know, I've broken stuff, but I've never had a problem with getting it and it just didn't work, or it had a wonky trigger or whatever. It just always seems to work. They're not the most flashy, you know. It's not like a Harder Steinbeck where it's like the Rolls Royce of airbrushes. But I'll tell you, once that trigger starts going out on the Harder Steinbeck, it's a mess. So and they clog really fast. And I'm just all about not clogging. Question.
Well, you have 1 minute left.
Okay. I can keep talking because this is the last. I mean, we can go all night.
Oh, no. No.
Technically 1 minute, but you know what? If you keep asking questions, I'll keep answering.
Yeah, no. Have you used the Infinity?
Yeah. So the Infinity 2-in-1 was my very first airbrush. And I had some serious butt pucker for at least 3 years. Like, I would clinch every time I used that thing because I never knew if it was going to be 2 hours of airbrushing and things were okay, or if it was going to be 2 minutes of airbrushing and then 2 hours of cleaning, because it clogged all the time. And especially with acrylic paints, you'll find acrylic paints clog like crazy because they hate your airbrush. And the Infinity is such a high-end, such a precise nozzle size, so small, it just tends, the acrylics love clogging it. So your alternative is to thin your paints massively. And here's one of the things, okay, here's another selling point for the Vex. I don't thin my paints very much. You know, people were freaking out when I did my first impressions of the Vex because I used some Reaper paint, and they're like, did you not clean, like, do you just use it straight? And I'm like, no, I thinned it. But I thin my paints 20 to 30%, maybe max. I know people who thin their paints 8 to 2. Like, they're literally water spraying through the airbrush. And so this airbrush will spray much thicker paints. Obviously, it sprayed the Sinores primer, and primer is the thickest, gnarliest paint you can have. And you saw the control I had on that primer. So it works really well. But it also just doesn't clog as bad. So another thing, I've got good precision. It doesn't clog as bad. And I'm airbrushing more than I'm cleaning. That's a huge selling point for me. Like, period.
Do you use the airbrusher? Why am my mouth not working?
Let me guess what the question is. Do I use the airbrush for interpretive dance? Yes.
No.
Do I take it to bed with me? Okay, and Liz hates this, but I do. I took the Vex to bed with me the first night. I was like, baby, someone's come between us. I'm sorry.
No. Do you use airbrushes for sealing? Holy cow.
For like on the ceiling?
For like sealer.
Sealer, yes, all day long. Okay, so Reaper Brush On Sealer works. I spray that. Okay, don't tell Ed. But so I'm allowed to get paint whenever I go to Reaper. I did that MSP thing. You know, hey, you're kind of a big deal, whatever. You can have whatever paint you want. Okay, cool. That's awesome. That's an awesome perk. Yeah, I take boxes of brush on primer and black, Dragon Black. I don't take any other paints though. I'm cool. Like, you know, if I take 20 paints, it's not 2 of each. It's just 10 of each, you know. So brush on sealer works great through the airbrush. You're going to thin it just a little bit. Okay. If you want to get a big bottle of it, I can't think of the name of the company, but at Michael's they sell these big things of matte sealer and gloss sealer. It's kind of thick paint. It's weird when you open the bottle. It's kind of thick, but if you thin it just like a normal paint, oh my gosh, they spray down perfectly matte or perfectly glossy. So yes, all day long you can seal with an airbrush. Hit me. Question.
Have you ever used a pache? How do you say that?
Pache. So I told you when I started airbrushing, I had such a frustrating experience. I airbrushed for about 6 months and I quit for 5 years. Now I look back at that and I'm like, man, if I'd gotten over that hump or had a different airbrush, where could I be now? I would be somebody, right? So I quit for 5 years, and then after that, I've been airbrushing for 10 or so. The Pache was my first airbrush. And granted, I went in, I owned a screen print shop, and I went into my screen print shop supplier, and I said, give me the best airbrush you have. Maybe that was the problem. I got the best one that they had. So it was a bottom feeding cup. That's the other thing. The Reaper Vex is top. It's a gravity feed. This is very important for what we do, our hobby. It's way better to have the paint falling down than it is sucking it up because, again, acrylics hate to be airbrushed. So I got a Pache. I can't remember the brand or anything, but it was a bottom feed one, and I just couldn't get paint to come out. Like, I would thin it and thin it and thin it, and then when it finally came out, it wasn't thick enough to airbrush anything. So I just realized with that, I was like, you know what? Airbrushing isn't for miniature painting. It's not going to work. But guess what? It totally works. In my Get to Know Your Vex video, I show a bunch of pictures of models that I've painted with the Vex over the last couple of years. And that was just a couple. I've painted hundreds with the Vex. And you can get very tight detail. You can get a look that sometimes, like if you don't want to spend a lot of time, it will still have that airbrushed soft look. But if you spend time paintbrushing with the regular paintbrush and detailing out your miniatures, you will not be able to tell whether it's airbrushed or paintbrushed. And it will be amazing in a fraction of the time. So, I mean, there's just so many selling points on an airbrush in our hobby. I just don't know. You know, one of the things, like I said before, I really hope that we get a lot of women taking our airbrushing 101 classes and even picking up the Vex, because I think you guys are amazing at this hobby. Like, absolutely amazing. And with all the video tutorials I see of makeup and fingernails and stuff like that, obviously women are kicking butt with airbrushes, but not so much in our hobby. There's a couple really good ones. They've jumped on the horse and they're riding away with it, you know? But I think it's a tool that everyone can use. It's just like a paintbrush. You just got to learn to use it, you know? It's scary because you can't see inside of it. That's it. Any other questions?
I think.
Any other answers?
Hold on, wait. Sorry, I was trying to type something up.
Okay.
Oh, I lost it. Hold on.
Did they ever? Who won the contest on the 1 or 2? Or was
there was
everyone?
A contest?
Yeah, I told everyone.
Everybody kept saying 3.
Oh my god.
What's the smallest detail you've airbrushed on a model with the Vex?
The smallest detail? So I could do, like, on something like this. Okay, let's get it really close. Too close. Back up a little bit. Technical difficulties. Oh my gosh. This is a fantastic sculpt, by the way. Like this year's Reaper miniatures for ReaperCon. Home freaking run all day long. Now, granted, I like pirates. So, Andy Finley. Yeah, I know you're having a ball at this ReaperCon. Okay, so on this model right here, I would do things like, I would put a shadow. I don't have a small paint. I got rid of all my paintbrushes. They're down here. I found one. Okay, never mind. So I would put a shadow on the bottom side of this skull right there. So, and just make it a little bit darker right in there. So, like, say the skull was cream colored, and I wanted to come in and just make it a little bit browner or a little bit darker. I could come in and I could hit that little spot right there. I would hit the bottom part of this thing right here, darker towards the blade, and then, you know, not as dark out here. So you can hit really small stuff. I've hit the okay, so when we're painting faces, you know, they always say put the red in the cheeks, the apple of the cheeks. Holy cow, if you try to do that with glazes and stuff, I mean, talk about butt pucker. I'm clinching, because even with a nice smooth or thinned out glaze, you're always going to get rings. It just always happens. So I've hit the cheeks with the red, just real lightly, boom, right there. So I think that's pretty small. Yeah, so you can hit really small stuff with this. Now, obviously, you're painting something bigger. Here's the model that I started painting with my first impressions of the Rex. the Vex. God, I can't talk
The
anymore.
Rex?
It's getting late, guys. So I was putting in little shadows like on these pecs right here, like that lower side of the pec. I was hitting that with a little bit more of a shadow. I actually, just to see if I could do it, I put a shadow all the way along the bottom edge of this. I don't think I would do that normally, but I just did it to see if I could do it. Look, there's a little bit of teal right in the cheek right there. I also hit back here. So those are like 2 separate sprays. Boom, boom. Very small. But then if you pull back a little bit, you can hit a bigger area. But look at this. There's teal right in here, but you almost can't see it on this side. So my spray was controlled enough to hit it stronger over here. There's a little bit of overspray, but not much. So I really like that control. Look at this. The bottom side of this muscle, I hit just that little spot right there. So you can definitely hit really small stuff. You have to be controlled. You have to be precise with the pullback on your trigger. But once you get the techniques down, kind of the sky's the limit, because this allows you can paint a model like this model right here. We do a paint hobby type thing. It's free for everyone. You don't have to be a miniature monthly member or whatever. We post it on our Facebook page every month. And we do like a 4 or 6 hour session on a Saturday, and we have a speed paint. So this was a 2-hour paint job. And so whoever wins our speed paint gets the model that I painted that day. So this is where I finished up with, but I'm going to finish highlighting it and making it better. Because I want the person who won it to get like a really cool Aaron Lovejoy paint job, not just a 2-hour. But I'll also come in and spray like little bitty shadows or little bitty red spots, on the bottoms of his cheeks. I can actually bring up my highlight. So this doesn't just work on shadows. You can actually put in a highlight color. So if I use like a tealy blue color, I could mist the top of his hat, and it will actually make the hat look brighter, and then you get a better highlight. So.
How does the airbrush do with
That's the difference in size too.
metallics?
With metallics.
Yeah,
Metallics
sorry.
are no problem. No problem at all. So again, I run my air pressure higher so I can use less thinner. Metallics, the problem with metallics is if you thin them too much, which most people, they just keep thinning until it goes through the airbrush. And especially with a detail airbrush, you're going to have problems. With the Vex, you're not going to have problems because more paint can come out. Don't thin them as much. That's the first thing. So maybe raise your air pressure. That might be the first reason to raise your air pressure. Raise your air pressure a little bit. Thin your metallics less and just airbrush them as is. They should go down pretty good. Another trick for airbrushing metallics, put a little bit of satin varnish. Or no, I'm sorry, not satin varnish. Glaze medium in it. The most mesmerizing metallic airbrush I've ever seen was standard metallics, like any Reaper metallic, with a little bit of glaze medium and then a little bit of thinner. And the glaze medium, for some reason, it allows those metallic pigments to lay out more evenly. I don't know what it is. It looks amazing. So a little bit of glaze medium. You can get that at Michael's too, or Vallejo. I don't know if Reaper has a glaze medium. I don't think. They might, though. We could ask. Ron?
Do you think airbrush brush control is easier or more difficult to train than with an actual airbrush? I mean, with an actual brush. I'm so tired.
It's super similar. So with an actual brush, the difference is, so if I'm painting this guy right here, and I'm like, okay, I want to put this little red dot on his cheek. So I'm going to put a little bit of paint on my brush, and I'm just going to lay it on there. Maybe I'm going to thin it out a whole bunch, and I'm just going to put it on there, and maybe it's good, maybe it's not. But I didn't mess up the whole face. Here's the difference. I'm going to put a dot on that guy's cheek with my airbrush, and then I go, oops, and he's completely red on that side, and now you've ruined your paint job. So that's the difference. But I always tell my students, I tell them it's like beating a drum. Like I just beat this into their heads. You just got to keep practicing. You got to practice and practice and practice, and you got to do it. And you just got to not be afraid that you're going to mess up. And if you do, have some water ready or a wet sponge and try to wipe it off as quickly as possible. But that's the main difference, with the airbrush and the paintbrush. I've gotten to the point where I'm so confident that I just don't care. Like I just don't care anymore. I don't even think about it. So I will paint. So one of my studio figs, like a studio box art paint job, those things can start anywhere from $350 and up, right? So just imagine you've finished your $350 paint job. And in the last 5 minutes, you're pushing shadows and making things like really awesome. So you're putting more shadows onto your paint job via the airbrush, and you mess up then. Like you've literally wrecked a $350 paint job. So that's where it gets really scary. But I think the more you do it, at first I was really scared. I was really tentative with my shadows, and I was like, I don't want to do something that small. But then I started getting to the point where I'm like, hey, you know what? I think I could actually hit the bottom side of this belt buckle and just make it a little darker, and just hit that belt buckle. I'm without masking anything off, nothing. Like, get that control. And I'm telling you, once you get that control, holy cow, the sky is literally the limit. So, question, fingers up.
Actually, want to interject here.
This isn't really
Okay.
an airbrush question.
Okay,
but...
hold on just a second. He's interjecting.
Oh, sorry. I can't.
No problem.
She can't hear you.
Oh, that's right. She didn't have a headset on.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to interject and kind of not to be that guy, but
We're done?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's been fantastic, guys. You guys did a great job.
Thank you very much. If you have more questions, go on my Reaper artist thing where you can chat with artists. I don't know what it's called, Artist Alley, and ask there. I'll try to answer them. Sometimes it's a longer answer than I have time for, but or it's too many words. But I'll try to answer whatever I can. Also, go take my online class. www.miniaturemonthly.com. If you want to see the early bird special again, it's early bird 50. You get 50% off the 4-pack, so the 4-week bundle. If you can't make it to all 4 weeks, that's still okay because we're videotaping it and you can watch it later. So either way, these are interactive classes. We have a Discord set up so people can practice, post their work, all that stuff. And the goal is to get you better at airbrushing. So check that out. Thank you guys all for coming out. I had a blast. I was so nervous, like oh my gosh. So anyways, it just means I'm alive, right? So anyways, thank you guys so much. And I hope you have a good rest of your ReaperCon. And thank you, Reaper, for having me. Thank you for picking up the Vex, because I love it. And I'm so glad that I can actually get more airbrushes.
Absolutely. Thank you guys too for putting on this for us on this late Friday night.
Yeah, no problem. I had a blast.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I love watching the Vex. It's really cool. It is. It's probably one of the coolest things Reaper's ever put together. So, but
I'm just stoked. I'm stoked it's a Reaper Vex. You know, like the logo looks cool. The black airbrush looks cool.
Oh yeah.
The fact that it works fantastic is super cool. Like that's all I care about. I could care less about what it looks like, but the fact that it works really good, bam, all day long.
Absolutely. And you know, to quote the old saying, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So
exactly.
The party continues over in the Discord, guys, all night if you want to. So
that's right.
That's right. Go talk to your friends. And Aaron, are you going to be in the Discord after this, or are you guys going to bed?
Yeah. I'll hang out in the Discord. And yeah, and as I always say, go paint something.
Awesome.